Hello, and welcome to Scavenger Life. This is episode number 193 on scavengerlife.com.
So today we're here talking with Chicago Tony V. Some of you who are on the blog know he kind of popped up a couple months ago, comments a lot, always good comments. I started talking to him off list. Hi, Tony, how are you? I just want to say that real quick.
I'm good, Jay. Thank you very much.
And the reason why I wanted to talk to him is because he's kind of an interesting story. You know, a lot of us are coming to eBay because we either lost our jobs or it's retired and wanted a second income, or we're tired of the corporate world. Tony's story is interesting because he actually runs several other successful businesses and started selling on eBay as kind of a side gig. So I don't know, real quick, Tony, could you kind of give us an update on, tell us about these other businesses and.
Sure. Out of sheer naivete, maybe I'd say, and youth, about 15 years ago, I started my first business with my business partner, who is still very much my business partners today, and we are actually old college roommates. So we go way back. But we started our first business about 15 years ago in basically the IT consulting field. We build and manage computer networks in the Midwest. We've basically been plugging away at that for the past 15 years, and we back when we started, we really started with nothing. My first desk, for example, was a door turned on its side.
Hey, that's like the classic startup model, right?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, we've never borrowed a nickel.
Wow.
And we're kind of proud of that. We just sort of grew it organically, and we now we have 15 years later, we have about 15 employees. We do a couple $1 million in revenue every year, which that sounds that may sound impressive. It's always sounds way better than it actually is. On the bottom line, and then we've also spun up a couple of other businesses in the IT field as well. So I'm a partner in three different businesses, all having to do with technology in various ways. So that's how I keep myself busy during the day.
See, I think that's interesting. So I think we're about the same age.
Yeah.
So I totally remember that time, like the late 90s, early 2000s. I actually wasn't smart enough to kind of jump into all that, but it sounds like you kind of got into that right at the right time when.
Well, the timing was right, but I'm not going to say it's because I'm smart. I think of it more as very lucky and again, kind of naive.
And that's interesting too. I mean, we have a lot to talk about, but just one question just popped into my mind. A lot of people I know that got involved in the tech industry, they immediately got scooped up and hired by the big companies to make big paychecks. But you've chosen just to keep with your own business rather than getting hired out to somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. I've always liked the idea of working for myself. I haven't always worked for myself, but now for a majority of my adult life, I certainly have. And I never really considered, kind of jumping ship and working for the man again, as they say. And now 15 years into it and three companies into it, it's just kind of woven into my DNA, and that's just kind of how I see the world now. I can't really conceive of, I guess, working for someone else.
Now, this is always interesting too, is owning a company in like a family business, or like is it a part of what your parents did? Do you have this kind of lifestyle in at your family? Like, have they run other businesses too? I mean,
no. My upbringing, my dad was a very successful executive for a big multinational corporation. So I guess from one sense, I did grow up in an environment where the idea of, let's be successful in business or industry, that was always kind of the expectation. I think the different twist in my case is ownership. And, kind of creating it from scratch and not going to work for a big company, which I think was a good fit for me because I'm sometimes to my detriment, but sometimes it's a benefit to be a pretty creative person. So I think I would have been bored. Actually, I did my first 4 years out of college. I did work for a very large bank, and I could see that I was going to be successful, and I could see this career path there at the bank, and I could clearly see the ladder, and I had no doubt that I could climb it, and that made me bored to tears, basically. So I just, for whatever reason, I do better when I get to kind of live and die by my own decisions.
Now, the other interesting thing is, and again, this will show my, where I'm coming from. A lot of people that I knew that worked in the tech industry, they went straight to the its coasts. So they were either it's New York or San Francisco. But it sounds like you've stayed based in the Midwest. Is there a reason for that, or was that harder or better because no one else was wanting to stay there?
Well, I think at the time that we started, I think tech was so hot and so sought after that we would have been fine almost anywhere. We're near a fairly large metropolitan area, and I suppose I probably wouldn't go to Terre Haute, Indiana, and have this big illustrious IT career. Although who knows, maybe I could. But I stayed in the Midwest mostly because of family. And, it's where I'm from. It's what I know. And we were kind of successful right from the get-go. So there was never any reason to kind of change direction, really. We've just kind of gradually grown year after year.
That's awesome. Yeah, because there's a lot of business in the Midwest, and someone has to help them or, do business with them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's the other thing that, when we first started doing eBay, we weren't really business minded. We were like workers, and we were good at working, but we didn't know about running our own business. And that's when I started to learn about gross income and net income. So when you say you make $3 million in revenue, that's gross before all the expenses, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
so
yeah.
that's it before. Yeah. And so I assume, and again, I know this is going to be funny, but it's a real business where you have like accountants and paychecks and, it's like all that stuff is happening, right?
Oh yeah. We have an accountant. We have an HR, full-time HR person. We have, one of the ways to look at it, Jay, is I haven't, and this is one of the reasons that I think I really took to eBay on the side. There are so many aspects of my businesses that I have not had to work in for years. I haven't generated an invoice myself probably in at least 6 or 7 years. I haven't. I mean, there's all sorts of HR stuff that I haven't done in years. There's all sorts of technical stuff that we provide as a service that I wouldn't even know where to begin. So, yes, I guess in that sense, we're kind of it's a real operation. I mean,
right.
When I look at payroll every month, that's how I know. Okay, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I just bring this up to help frame our further conversation when we get into eBay is that, this is such a different experience from those of us that we call it an eBay business, but it's so different than what a typical kind of American business is with employees. And, there's just a lot going on. And maybe, like you said, eBay is interesting because it's like much more down and dirty. It's like, you're more like a guy at the flea market, selling stuff off a table than, running a big company.
It's very, very different. I think, my eBay business, I do everything, start to finish. I find the item, I clean the item, I photograph, I list, I package, I ship, I respond to questions. And again, in my case, like I said, I think I really enjoy that because it's been, for my entrepreneurial brain, it's been kind of a renaissance. It's like, oh, right, there are all these details, and it's been fun for me to have to rely just on myself to do all these details. It's like, it's sort of it proves to me that, oh yeah, I still have, these kind of core skills and course. I can, like, if my businesses blew up tomorrow, I could still make a living for myself, no problem.
Before we get into eBay real quick, with your business that you have now, I mean, it sounds like things are going great now, but in those early days, were there a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of being very worried? Because we get that a lot in the comments of people just running just eBay businesses at home. People are worried about, can they pay their bills? People aren't buying today. That's really worrisome.
Right. Honestly, Jay, I think there are probably a few more sleepless nights now than there were then. But that's simply because of the kind of the complexity of my business life. When we started out, yes, there were times where, I distinctly remember our first meeting with our accountant, and 15 years ago. And we had been in business, like 3 months, and he says, he's just trying to set up our books. He says, okay, do you have a bank account and all that stuff? Yes, we do. How many transactions have you deposited into your business account? Well, we've had 3, like 3 ever, 3. And so in the early days, yes, it was touch and go. But I think also, again, we were younger, we were kind of naive, and I guess time also heals all wounds. So I tend to look back on those days kind of fondly. But again, today, and when I hear you and Ryan dance around the topic of having employees and everything, and you always have great reverence for the lifestyle that you guys have built, and trust me, I'm sitting in my car, listening to your podcast, and I'm just cheering, I'm literally clapping out loud. Yes, that's right. As I have found that for myself, as the complexity grows, it is more stressful, even though there's more income and, a better lifestyle and that sort of thing. There's almost, it's like I said, there are several jobs in my business that I have no idea how to do, and that's kind of unsettling.
I'm glad that you bring that up, because I know when I watch some of the people on YouTube, and they're really into, and it's cool. They have a vision for themselves of creating, as I call it, an empire,
Yeah.
And they want to grow big and get the warehouse and employees, and that's cool. But man, I think about that, I'm just like, it's just like it's more a money, a more problem kind of mentality,
Yeah, and I think one of the keys for eBayers to understand is that if you're growing your empire, I think this is true. I found this to be true with any business, and I'm sure eBay would be the same. If you're, quote unquote, growing your empire, what happens is, as you're successful at that, your role in your day-to-day job over time just completely changes. What I do on a day-to-day basis looks nothing like what I did back when we started. We like to say around here, we used to strap on the tool belt. We were the guys. It was just the two of us. We were the guys doing all the work, and it's completely different. So, one of the things, I think a lot of people enjoy certain parts of eBay, and probably a vast majority of sellers are, like me and like you guys doing it all on their own. Just know that with success, if you are building that empire, what that's likely going to mean is that you're not necessarily, doing what you used to do. Your job becomes completely different.
Now, I'm going to make an assumption here. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming your job now is probably getting clients, right? Or at least...
Yes, I like to say, I have this technical background, and I used to be, I was pretty good at that. What I am today, Jay, I like to say I'm the song and dance man of our company. I'm the meet and greet guy, and I'm, going to business lunches and having coffees and that sort of thing, which is fun, and it's great, but it's completely different from what I used to do.
Right. I mean, you're the one that are just making sure contracts are being signed and work is available for the 15 people who are doing the work, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how I imagine it would probably be for eBayers or probably more the Amazon people that get the big warehouses, is they're probably more just in charge of probably just keeping things flowing while other people are shipping and doing all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think as you grow a business, there's a reason that Henry Ford, is there's a reason we're still driving Fords today. This idea of as you grow an operation, you have basically a bunch of specialists, and that's been true in my own experience. It would be completely inefficient for me to try to do a little bit of everything, right, or for any other of our employees. Really, you have to kind of specialize. So yeah, you just gradually, I think, gravitate away from. You and Ryan talk a lot about kind of, you see yourselves as this mom and pop store.
Yep.
And that's these empires. These aren't mom and pop. It's a different kind of goal, I think.
I mean, and I promise you, we are going to talk about the eBay part, but this, I think, is a part that's interesting to me. I mean, having, 15 people under me, I feel like that would keep me up at night if, things got a little tight. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll put it this way, Jay. I haven't spent a month in Amsterdam. And, there's a reason for that.
Right.
When what do they say? When the cat's away, the mice will play. Right. And that's not to say that, right, I don't trust my people or right, anything like that. But it's just what we've built is, sometimes I see it as kind of this, it's like this big monster. It always needs to be fed. And you just, I do want to say, I really respect the lifestyle that you and Ryan have built, as a kind of you guys are just like me, you're business owners. I mean, there's a little difference, but the way you've built it, I think, is fascinating, and it's something I really respect.
I mean, I think that's the interesting part of this conversation that I hope people are pulling out, is that, because it does get exciting when you start selling on eBay, and I get this too, where if you're just like, well, if we just keep doing more and more and more, there's a logic to that. But yeah, it is good to think about, but yeah, what kind of lifestyle you want to create. And that's really, I think, why we do the podcast, is that's what keeps it interesting for us, is just talking about the lifestyle around this, and when we want to keep getting bigger, or maybe we want to pull back or start another business, we had that rental now. So
it's funny. I'm a huge I've probably listened to every episode at least once, every one that you guys have put out, and again, from my perspective as someone who, I kind of suffer from my own success, and again, that's not to say I'm some big successful guy, but
yeah,
I've done some things right, but again, it's this thing that now it's just more and more responsibility, pressure, higher numbers, all that stuff. Now, I will say, I think with eBay, what I have found for myself is it's kind of that, it's the ripcord. It's the potential parachute. My dad retired at 56 years old, and for years, I always thought, oh man, how in the heck do you do that? I mean, that's pretty crazy. But I think what I've stumbled upon with eBay, I think, is I could see myself transitioning sometime in the future, almost like going into early retirement and just doing eBay. And what I'm doing, kind of the way I look at it right now, obviously that's years down the road, but I will tell you, eBay for me, because I don't have to really consume any of the income that I'm spinning off of eBay. I kind of see it as just this investment vehicle. So it's kind of like this extra retirement plan for me. And in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, I wonder if I haven't found a way to practice for 10 years doing eBay, get a lot of experience, also, spin off a bunch of just kind of extra investment income and stuff. And who knows, in 10 years, I might say, you know what, I'm ready to I'm ready to sell the businesses, play a little bit of golf, and do eBay for, 4 days a week or something. And it's just awesome to, I get the feeling that, eBay for me and for so many people it gives you options.
So let's start talking about eBay, but I will
Sure.
I will say that actually happened to us is this week that eBay gives us a luxury because we still do. We're in a technical field too. We do tech stuff. But now what eBay does, it lets us say no to people. So we had a client, we kind of got down the road. It's with them. We were getting to where we were setting up what the job would be and, writing a contract. And then we just realized after some conversations that it was getting too complicated or more complicated than we wanted it to be. And we really kind of surprised the client by just saying that we wanted to not be a part of this anymore. And it was a great feeling because when I started getting that feeling in my stomach of like, oh, this is going to be like 2 months of like a lot of torture, I just don't want that in my life anymore,
Yeah. Well, you strike me as someone who's you're very in tune with the lifestyle you want to lead, and you're very true to that. And again, I know you can't really build that sort of lifestyle overnight, but you guys are just a great example, I think, to all of us that it really pays to be thoughtful about how do I want to live? Why am I doing this? What can I do differently? How do I sleep at night?
Okay, so let's talk about eBay. So you run these businesses and, from the outside, you look like a guy successful and you're the technology guy. And then suddenly you decide, I'm going to do a little scavenging on the side. I mean, is that something that you've always done or like paint us that picture?
Well, I tell you, I think I have always had the brain that makes me well suited to do this, but I did not really think of myself as a scavenger. I have always liked kind of old vintage things, and I've always liked seeing a diamond in a rough. I can remember when I was in high school, I grew up I had a pretty affluent childhood, I think you'd say. And I can remember in high school, I don't even remember how this happened, but stumbling into a thrift store, which it's just something I had never done. But I remember, I'm not even sure I knew they existed, but I remember stumbling into a thrift store and I found a polo shirt. It was in perfect condition. And even then I thought, and it was, like $2. I thought, oh my gosh, the world needs to know about this. Yeah. I mean, you can get a perfectly good polo shirt for $2. And I bought it and I probably wore it for years. Yeah. And I think I've always had that. I've had this ability to kind of, I don't know, I like seeing bargains. I like seeing things that have value that have maybe just been sort of tossed aside.
I think that's really interesting because, Wendy, who used to do this podcast, it's with us, would talk about that. It's for her, like when she scavenged it or got it from the waste stream, that it became more valuable to her, and she actually like emotionally enjoyed wearing it or using it more because it just felt more special than just going to a store and it's got a price tag on and anyone can get it and
Yeah, I think and I think in a way what we're doing is we're giving these forgotten items a new life. You guys talk about that a lot, and I think it's so true. Every time we go out to a garage sale, or I think the perfect example is a weigh and pay. I was at a Goodwill outlet. There's one 5 minutes away from my office, which is really dangerous. I've spent lots of lunches at the weigh and pay.
You're like Don Draper in Mad Men who sneaks out to see a movie, but you're the one that sneaks out to the weigh and pay, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And I found one of my favorite finds at the weigh and pay. I found a Van Halen baseball cap from a 1979 tour.
Oh my God, dive her down.
I mean, this thing was, I bought it for 25, happily bought it for 25 cents. But this thing was about to be thrown away. And I was able to sell it for a lot more than 75 cents to, someone who I'm sure loved it. And I think there's real power in putting an item into the hands of someone who's going to appreciate it.
Now, sometimes when we talk about this on the blog, the more cynical people come on, and I get it because I can be a cynical person. You're like, this is such crap. Like, who cares? You're just, we're just selling stuff. Big deal. But I think it is important that what you're talking about is a motivation that keeps you going when eBay is very unglamorous and seems really boring and useless. Like. There needs to be that emotional connection to the things we're finding and selling, or else it just feels like another dumb job,
Oh yeah, and I think I'll go even a little further, Jay. I think one of the things it does for me, in addition to saving items, it makes me look at myself and say, okay, what about all the junk in my house? Like, what am I doing? Am I appreciating these things? I've sold some of my own possessions because I just thought, this thing's it's nice and, whatever, but it's been sitting in a drawer for 10 years. And I think, too, the more scavenging I do, I was at a garage sale not too long ago. It's one of these things where you go into someone's garage and everything they've laid out is just cheap piece of junk from something they bought at Walmart or whatever, and they have piles and piles and piles of this stuff. I think in a way that's a way to visualize. Okay, here's what we're doing to ourselves. Like, we're surrounding ourselves with this cheap junk. When you go to the place where you find something, mid-century, something that's very, very well made, that still works just as well today as it did 50 years ago, it gives you this perspective. And this is the business, at least early on, that I'm going to expose my son to. I have a 4-year-old son, and he already likes to wander into my home office and just look at all my stuff. What is this? What is this? What does it do? And I think it's going to be this great teaching tool in so many ways.
I'll take it a step further than you now, is that when I go into like an estate sale or an auction where they're selling off a person's home, the person's died, and all this stuff is being sold off. It's a philosophical experience for me. And I know people will laugh about this, but I often do think like, wow, we're buying a man's life in about 2 hours,
Yes.
And like, this is basically what it's all about. Like, when I die, I'm just going to have a pile of stuff, and it's just going to get sold off in about 2 hours to, 100 different people. I mean, like, so...
Let's face it, Jay, when you die, you're going to have several buildings worth of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, it's just like, so that's why when we're talking about how I think it's precious or careful about our lifestyle, because I know that this is it, like, each moment we have is like, if I'm not enjoying myself or being challenged in a good way, then
Oh yeah, and maybe this is what you were saying with the estate sale thing, but I'll maybe say it in a different way. One of the things it tells me, again, you're absolutely right. You walk in and the person's gone, and now here are all these artifacts of them having existed, and here's all their stuff. And like you said, within a couple of days, it's over, it's gone. And one of the things it teaches me is that I am not my stuff. Like, I don't own anything. Like, go into my house, there's all this stuff that I've purchased. None of it's mine because I'm not going to live forever. And I think it's freeing, and again, it's given me. I think eBay and scavenging have just given me this great perspective that's it's gonna serve me well.
Now, so you are enjoying scavenging. At what point do you decide, well, I'm going to sell this stuff on eBay? Even though I have 3 businesses with employees, I'm going to actually start to sell stuff for $9.99 on eBay.
Those were only my early listings, Jay. I would never sell something that cheap. To be honest, the way I got started, Jay, is I got roped in by some of these kind of get rich quick YouTube videos, sorts of thing. I think I got on some video watching Jag and learned that people were selling on eBay, and of course some of these videos are downright hilarious and make some great claims. And I think something I think the entrepreneur gene in me was, I just thought, all right, I've got to just try this out just for fun. That's really what got me started. I just kind of felt like I have to try it. So I just bought a few things, put them up on eBay, and I tell you what, that first cha-ching on my phone, I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Oh,
I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have to pack this thing and mail it, and how does this work? Of course I had researched it, and it ended up working fine. But when I actually having to do it, it was a little nerve wracking. But I was basically hooked within the first couple of sales. I was just completely hooked. I loved it from the get go.
I think that's interesting because I think a lot of new people who come on eBay and they end up at our blog is everyone talks about finding and selling an item, but it's after the cha-ching is where it really starts to see if you're ready to run a business or not. Because I think a lot of new sellers get kind of hung up on, packing correctly, figuring out the shipping price, if there's a problem dealing with customers. I mean, that's really where the business comes in,
Yeah, for sure. And I think I was surely at an advantage because I've put myself in kind of stressful, complex situations where something had to be delivered, for years and years. So I think the business side of eBay was not something that I ever even thought twice about.
Yep.
And, again, because I tend to kind of look at it, I think almost from an investment perspective. What I started doing early on is when I'd sell something, I'd invested in supplies and things, So from pretty early on, I was able to build some pretty nice little infrastructure, things like I've got every type of shoe polish you could ever want. And I've got all sorts of little tools that I use to kind of clean things and prep things and all sorts of packing stuff. I don't think I've overdone it, but I just was, I always looked at it. I guess just having built businesses, it was just like building any other business. You make some revenue, you invest a bunch of it back in, and you kind of build up. So
it's really what you're saying is that the same skills of running a $3 million company is basically the same kind of skills as just running an eBay business from home, kind of.
I think in a lot of ways, for sure. And actually, what eBay has done for me is it's given me these great reminders when I'm in my, day job. This thing, you guys say it all the time, always be listing. Really, I think if someone were to study your podcast and sum it up, sum up all however 100 episodes, I think really it would distill down to, 3 or 4 really key things. Always be listing, have prompt response to customer questions and needs. And, there would be a few other things. And that's really helped me to remember, there's some key things in my other businesses. It's not all that complicated. It's easy to make it complicated and you get lost in the weeds, but it's not that complicated. As a matter of fact, in my sales role, I've literally started, I give myself a kind of a quota for just, having coffees with people, reaching out to people, that sort of thing. I've literally started calling it listing. It's on my calendar as, I've got to list 6 things this week. In my business, that means I've got to make 6 new business contacts. And I finally did that because eBay, I learned through listening to your podcast and trial and error that, yes, you and Ryan are correct. Always be listing. That's the core. That's the secret. The secret is there is no secret. Right. And I think that's really what just any business is all about. It's hard work and some luck and dedication and that sort of thing.
I mean, I always tell people it's like working out. I'm not a big workout guy, but we do a bit of exercise. And really it's like you can buy all these books and it's like, take these pills. But at the end of the day, you just got to get out there and just put in half an hour every couple days. And that's what it's about. It's about just, you got to do the motions.
Yes, absolutely right. Just be consistent, show up every day, do your best, and it's going to work out.
So, okay, and again, we're just trying to do some comparisons or from your other business. So when you started selling on eBay and you're going and buying a hat for 25 cents and selling it online, I mean, what were you thinking about the profit margins? Because I didn't come from a business background, but even I was like, I'm making like 2,000% profit on this. Like, this is not normal, you know?
Oh yeah, that was very, very enticing. And early on, you know, yes, the I mean, I've never approached those margins on anything ever, not even close. And so there was this. I remember my early eBay, my first couple or 3 months. I was just thinking, it was like I had discovered the cure for cancer. You know, it's like this great secret. But of course, the trick is the part of the equation that eBay necessitates is time. Right. Time is in that equation somewhere too. So, and it's just like you always say, and I can do this. I can, you know, today is Saturday. I could have gone out this morning and easily found 100. I could have easily paid $100 for, you know, 30 or 40 things that I could ultimately sell for, you know, whatever, $5,000. Like, I now understand that's easy. That's not the problem. The problem is the time. It's the listing. So my philosophy with eBay, I've kind of come to believe that it's very important to invest your profits in something else that literally takes no time. You know, now you guys have done this with your house. That does still take time, but it's a great example of you're never really gonna. I think you're gonna level out momentum-wise if you're always just relying on your own labor. You do have to at some point make your money work for you.
Yeah,
while you're sleeping.
I think that's something that's slowly dawning on us. Us starting that a rental was kind of just something we thought would be fun, but you know, thank God it also makes a lot of business sense too. And we're realizing, like as we get older, like I don't want to sell shoes forever. I mean, I think we'll always enjoy scavenging and selling online, but you know, at some point we can't put as much hours as we're doing. And it's good to try and find ways to reinvest your profits in something, real estate. You know, did you invest in like in funds and like you know, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, you know, just like so many of us, you know, I do a lot of the traditional things. I've always had a 401k. I think my businesses are, in a way, are kind of investments. But aside from that, I really like investing in specific stocks. So I like dividend reinvestment plans. You know, these like a lot of the really big companies like a Coke or Pepsi, you can buy their stock every month. It's just like an automatic withdrawal. And anytime they pay dividends, it's paid to you in more stock. And that's a kind of a cool set it and forget it way to, I think, you know, build some wealth over time. I personally like that better than investing in funds, oddly enough, because I want to know what I own. Like if I own a part of a fund, it might that might own some Walmart stock this month, but next month it doesn't, just because the fund manager kind of switched it up. So
now,
how's that for a tangent?
now the if I didn't know you and I heard it's your background and I heard you were interested in selling online, I would assume a guy like you would be like, I want to do Amazon, because Amazon is like, I can like go online and like buy from a wholesaler and send it to the Amazon warehouse. You know, it seems a lot more efficient. And eBay is really kind of for, I call it like myself a trash shelf. You know, it's like it's just like this really weird world where you're handling a lot of different items, and it's like you said, spending a lot of time on every single one of them. Like, is Amazon in your line of sight or not interesting?
Well, I would say that it's possibly on my bucket list. You know, it's something that I might look at. But if I were doing this just simply, you know, for investment sake or for business sake or whatever, I I might not be doing eBay. But I think, being in technology, I have found it to be kind of a very cold industry. Let's face it, it's an industry that's built on things breaking down. That's what fuels the whole industry. Yep. You buy a computer today and it's obsolete next year because it has to be, because it's this big engine or whatever.
Yep.
And if I were just, trying to make more money, which I do like to do, and that's a goal. Yep. But if that were my only goal, I might do something like Amazon. And the thought of, firing up kind of building another empire, like, I'm sure I could do that, or at least I know how I would go about doing that. And I probably, in a lot of ways, I have, some of the pieces already just, I have accounting, I have HR, I have management experience. So, but eBay is just so darn fun. And it's hard to imagine Amazon being, quite as fun as eBay.
Yeah. No, and I think that just goes back to maybe, if you're honest with what excites you about this, eBay can be exciting because you're dealing with more special items versus you're just selling a widget. It's whatever I think I can, make 20 cents on. And as long as I can sell a lot of them, that's a business.
Yeah. I've heard you talk a lot about eBay can be a lonely endeavor, and I can see how that could be true. Listing sometimes can be really lonely, but the other side of it, especially like getting out and going to garage sales and stuff, I just enjoy the heck out of it. Yeah. I've actually, going to garage sales has become, it's like it's this fun game that I have a hilarious story that I wanted to make sure to tell on your podcast. All right, so I have really kind of built up this garage sale persona and wardrobe. So what I wear to garage sales, it's all stuff that I found like in the basement bin. It's nothing fits, nothing looks right. It's not quite put together. It's maybe missing a button or two. And so I have this whole get up and I go to garage sales, and I coupled with that, I like to interact with people. So I perceive myself as kind of, I probably come across as, boy, there's a loser, but he sure is nice and friendly. And I use this whole thing for discounts at checkout at a garage store. So I'm at a garage store the other day. It's an elderly lady who is downsizing. She's moving out of her home. She's been there for 30 years. She's moving to a condo, and she's selling all her stuff. And she has all this great mid-century stuff. It is fabulous. It's fairly priced. I'm just chomping at the bit. The other thing I have is an IKEA bag because I just want to have something huge. So it's perfect. I'm chit-chatting. I'm just having fun talking with her. I'm piling all sorts of stuff in my bag. And I get to, I unload at the kind of the checkout table. And one of the things I like to do just to try and haggle a little bit is I'll say, oh boy, but like my bill at this garage, it was $18. And I said, and I kind of hate myself for doing this, but I did it anyway. I said, my mom, or my wife has, she's got me on a $10 allowance. I promised her I'd only spend $10. Is there any way? And right away, oh, well, now a man behind her who ended up being her son steps up kind of abruptly. He says, Mom, do not give this man a discount. He says he is wearing a $400 watch. He said he has a Burberry watch on his wrist. Do not give this guy a discount. I said, what? And just in deep down, I am not the kind of guy to spend $400 on a watch. I said, oh, no, you must be mistaken. I looked down. Sure enough, I have a Burberry watch.
Mm.
It was a gift. It was a gift for my wife. I thought, I'll be darned. I have a Burberry watch. I never even knew it. And, of course, I'm thinking, oh, man, why is my wife spending this much on a watch? But anyway, I said, so now I'm totally busted.
Yep.
I'm trying to get the stuff for $10. $18 price tag. I said, I'll tell you what, I gave her a 20. I said, keep the change. But now I leave the watch in the car.
Yeah, right? Oh. It's funny. I think I have, because it's Mikey and I early on, we talked about this too, about going to flea markets and yard sales and how we become kind of different people. I think I'm kind of like an old man. I kind of wear old man clothes because I like to wear those anyway. Real comfortable shoes. And I just think I just kind of act like a old man at these places, like really kind of, I'm always in wonder. I'm really appreciative of looking at everything. I'm willing to have really long conversations with people. And it's not out of it's like you said, it's not like where any of us are trying to get over on someone. It's just like, that's just the thing I enjoy. It's almost like it's really who I am almost, It's like...
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
We're not good enough actors that we can be someone that we're
almost
not.
like this lets me be the person who I really want to be. I just like walking around, looking at junk, and just talking to people and hearing about their families. It's like no other. I would never have this chance to do this in any other aspect of my life because I have to wear other kinds of faces, professional and technology and all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, yeah, my wife would tell you I can't dress myself anyway, so my thrift costume is probably not all that far from my normal dress, when I'm at home. So, no, that's a good point.
Now, something that you said earlier that I think is so true, we get people that come on the blog, and they're like, I just started. I need to pay all my bills by the end of the month with eBay. So how do I do this? And we're always, and I'm just like, it's not going to happen. And what you said was great. eBay's a slow learn, and you're kind of have like a timeline, like maybe over the next 5 years or something, 10 years, you'll have built up enough of a business where then you could sell off at your other businesses. I mean, that's smart. I mean, and I bet that's true for any business, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think just from an ownership perspective, a long-term perspective is usually the smarter play. Anyway, I feel for anyone that's in a situation where they
Right.
feel like their back's up against the wall and they have to list. What I'll say is I have found, as a business owner, I mean, a lot of sometimes you got to pull all-nighters. I work. Well, especially now that I started eBay, my gosh, my hours are insane. But yes, I think a long range perspective makes a lot of sense. And you say a lot of times, Jay, you'll talk about you'll tell friends about eBay, and you're just shocked when almost none of them ever do it. Now that they kind of know the secret, I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I really think just about anyone, especially kids, certainly my kid is going to be, it's my intent to kind of bring them up through eBay. It's this experience, and it's totally within anyone's reach.
Well, I think that's the thing, though. I think that's why the being in love with scavenging is so important, because I think a lot of the people, it's my friends who I tell, like they get the eBay part. They're like, yeah, I've sold something to eBay once, and that's amazing that you're making that kind of cash. But I think they get bored with the idea of going out there and getting a bunch of junk, and they're just like, ugh,
Yeah, well, I think that's the easy part. I think listing is
right,
and organizing. That's
right.
where the rubber hits the road.
Right.
And I had I've been selling for less than 2 years. I started January of 2014, and I did go through the Freshman Slump. I was great guns for 4 months or so, and then I said, "My gosh, this is a lot of work! Yeah. Holy cow!"
I mean, that's why it's so important to put as much effort into developing a lifestyle that you're comfortable with. Yeah, because after 3 or 4 months, you start realizing this is it. It's never going to get any easier, really.
Yes, yeah, that's very true. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't sometimes think about, especially when I'm, let's say like a Friday night, it's midnight, I've been on a listing jag, and I just think, why am I doing this?
Right.
Sometimes I do think, all right, I'm going to get employees. I'm going to, because I know I could do that, but then I always, I pull back and say, okay, let's just list the next item.
So why don't we talk about this? So you're a lone gun. So, is me and Ryan have the benefit of being a couple doing this. So if your wife doesn't have anything to do with this?
No. I mean, what she pays into the business is she's losing years of her life just based on my mess. I think she's a saint for, you talk about the big scary pile of stuff. I mean, that's me.
Yeah.
I've taken over our entire basement, and my poor wife does have to see that every day. But no, other than that, no, I do it all.
During the daytime, if you put on the nice clothes and you're meeting with clients and you're meeting with your employees, do other people know about this, or is this like a secret of your life?
I think it's mostly a secret. I have mentioned to my business partner, obviously my accountant knows, but I don't think that anyone has any idea. Even for the very, very few people that know that I do it, I don't think anyone would ever imagine that, I'm staying up till midnight on a Friday night, listing stuff. I think they have no clue.
Huh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's another reason why, we all kind of are attracted to all these blogs online because, like in our personal lives, even if people know, they don't care and they don't really realize, like, wow, you're really spending a significant portion of your downtime doing this, So
yeah, that's right. That's right.
One thing, we're talking about like people on YouTube, and it's about like building an empire for Amazon or eBay. And sometimes I get a sense like they feel like there's a limit. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, so if you run these businesses or, you're 15 years in, I mean, there's a limit to any business, isn't there, where it's sustainable at some point? Or I've always wondered that.
Well, I mean, I kind of think mostly no. That there's no limit to the potential. I think what happens is reality happens. So, like in my main business, we went from two employees, the two partners, 3 checks, 3 invoices ever.
Yep.
Up to what we have hundreds of invoices a month and a lot of revenue. And what happens is, like I said before, it is now a different entity than it was when we started, yet we're the same people running the entity. And I think what can happen is the needs of your organization change and grow, and you have to have leadership that can handle that. And to be totally honest, like, we've never been the kind of guys that are going to go out and get a bunch of venture capital and stuff like that.
Right.
So we just simply, we grow, we reinvest, we don't borrow any money, we kind of grow slow. That's the only way we know how to do it. Right. But like on paper, there's probably endless potential. It's just, we're not the kind of people that are going to, build the next Hewlett Packard. If we were, we already would have been halfway there.
No, I mean, because I think this is always interesting in one thing, and this is getting philosophical here. So,
sure.
With like American business, we have these like public companies, and it's all about their stock, and people buy and sell their stock based on their growth potential. And and you hear on the news like, oh, IBM, they only grew 2%, and Apple, but they grew 7%, and it's always like unlimited growth. And I guess it's wondering, like, it just seems really unhealthy. And I guess what I try and tell people when they talk about building businesses is like, it's not like we choose to say we want to be really small, but we just try and choose to make sure we're sustainable. So I guess like with your other businesses, I mean, are you guys always wanting to keep growing, or are you happy with, being at a level that feels comfortable? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Well, we always look to grow, but I guess I would say we're just trying to grow profit. We're not,
right.
We're not. And I would also say now 15 years into it, and we both have families and, different priorities. We are more in tune with, the lifestyle issues. And that's a big issue. I think anyone that's doing anything, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the point?
Right.
I have this sneaking suspicion, and I think, listening to you guys, and I think eBay has given me this perspective. I feel like I'm going through a bit of an awakening that says, you know what, I have way more than I need, but what I don't have is time. How do I start to get some of that time back? And it's a heck of a thing to. Sometimes you're growing a business just to grow it, just because that's just what we do. But that you have to kind of ask yourself, all right, why?
I mean, so what I'm about to say is so typical, and I feel like it's almost like an archetype in the American psyche now. Like, it's my father. He's a baby boomer. Yep. He just retired about a year ago, so he's 67 years old. He had a long career as like an academic, worked at the same place for, who knows, 30, 40 years or something. And, he's done, and he did good. But he's like what you think of. He doesn't know what to do with his time, So it's like him and his little dog, and they take walks, and he goes to the library, and it's just, I mean, he's not totally unhappy, but I can just see, like, he just wasn't prepared for this, I mean, it's not a surprise that it's retired now. I just don't think he ever really put much thought into what would happen when that engine was turned off,
Oh, absolutely. I used to have this vision of, I'm going to play golf, and I'm going to, I'm just going to kick back. And I have learned, okay, that's not me. Like, that's very not me. But I tell you, Jay, again, this idea of eBay kind of being this retirement engine, I think I'm really starting to think, man, this is something I could do in my retirement. Still, I like making money. I like
solving problems, right?
Yeah. Well,
or what?
I think I think I like making money. Now, I don't think of myself as I don't have a bunch of nice things. Although we know I have a nice watch. That was news to me. But I'm not like a materialistic person by any means. But I like business. I like kind of being an entrepreneur. But I think eBay could be this. It's actually low stress. Yep. I think it's relatively low stress. I love the fact that I've never met any of my customers. They're all, seem to be very nice people that I don't need to know, and
Yep.
Yeah, but retiring without an understanding of, okay, what are you going to do? I mean, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's why, me and Ryan talk about this almost endlessly. Like, we went out to dinner last night, and we were even talking about it. Like, we always remind ourselves, the whole point of this is, like, we want the life we want now. So there isn't a point where this life ends and we have to start something else. Like, let's just build the life we want, and then we just die, So, and that's something that we've almost had to unteach ourselves, because, or at least I was personally taught this at school, the whole career and then retirement and,
right.
That kind of thing. So,
yeah, that's so smart. And I think that's, you guys see what you're doing is not only teaching us all how to do eBay, but we're kind of learning this different viewpoint on life. But I think I've come to believe there's this there's this untold secret in business. I think the secret is this. Anyone can do it. Anyone, that at least has their faculty, that's about all you need, is just kind of just normal average faculties. Anyone can be successful at it. I come across people all the time, every day, who are getting through life, and I'm just thinking, man, how's this person, I think anyone could do it. And I think this is why I think it's so important to start kids young, because I am developing this belief that this stuff is just inherent. These abilities to just kind of provide value and to get reasonably rewarded for it, I think they're built to all of us. I don't think, when I look back my entire business career, when I'm honest with myself and say, what part of my education am I using? I would say for sure, unequivocally, by 8th grade, I was set.
Yep.
I had everything I ever needed, all my writing skills, my speaking skills, my math skills. That's all I ever needed, and I could have really been working for myself. Maybe Thomas Edison wasn't that unique after all.
Yeah.
So I love every once in a while you'll bring up why not have kids do eBay? Well, I'm totally going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, someone just posted on the blog, and actually it's in kind of an old story from, I think, a little over a year ago. This girl in Florida, she was 14, and, back when homes were all being foreclosed upon, and she found that there was all this empty furniture in these houses that were being thrown away. And so she would just go over and get the furniture being thrown away, and she would sell it on Craigslist. And she made enough, I think she made like $14,000 selling this thrown away furniture. And then she bought a foreclosure, because at the time you could buy these cheap foreclosures, and to rent it. And I think she went on to do that to a couple more, and so she was on Ellen and NPR and stuff. But right there, she's set. Like, that experience will set her up for the rest of her life,
Oh, totally. It's funny. No one, there's no, I guess there are books that you can read on how to run a business, but not really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like you were saying earlier about eBay. Just start doing it and just do it. And if you ever, if any of the listeners, I did see that link on your in the blog section this morning about that girl. I hadn't read the article, but I'm sure it's going to be very popular. And I would just tell all the listeners, if you want a little insight into what are kids really capable of doing, I would read anything written in any speech given by John Taylor Gatto. He was an award-winning. Are you familiar with Gatto?
I'm not. No.
He was an award-winning school teacher in New York City. He taught 8th grade in the poorest schools in the city. He'd get these poor, basically uneducated kids, and just in the year that he got them, he had them winning debate competitions and other types of academic competitions against the rich private school kids. He had fabulous results, and he documented basically how he did it, and you can find any number of videos on YouTube. But this girl's story, it's a great story, and again, I think these abilities are inherent in anyone, even kids, and I think eBay could be a way to show a kid, look what you can do.
Right, totally. I mean, just imagine that. I mean, we're both in our early 40s, and when I was a teenager, we didn't have the internet yet, and so I was stuck with just, minimum wage jobs. Either it's making sandwiches or at the grocery store. Man, did you imagine what that must be like now being a kid? Like, you could, there's so much potential, that ways to make its money other than it's making, whatever, $6.25.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, there's also a lot of downside. There's endless opportunity for distraction. But
yeah,
I think just given even a little guidance, any kid would vastly benefit from the internet. And yeah, it's an awesome tool for sure. So
I have a couple more things, because we're having a good conversation here.
Sure.
But we hate to go on forever. So it's tax time, and we get a lot of questions that I'm never really able to answer on the blog about, like, accounting. Like, these are people like me who I work for someone my whole life, and then suddenly I have a business, and I'm having to look at my taxes in a totally different way. It's no more like a 1040 EZ. Now it's like I have to think of expenses and, COGS and, cost of goods sold. I mean, you're coming from running a larger business with lots of employees.
Yeah.
Are taxes for eBay more difficult? Is it just the same? I mean, how are you approaching it?
I think, so I'll preface this by saying, it's like you always say, talk to your accountant.
Yeah, get an accountant. I know.
Yeah.
People think I'm an asshole for saying that, but I'm like, That's just, don't listen to people on the internet.
Yeah. But having said that, here would be my answer. I think for the most part, it's the same as running any other business. You have certainly, I mean, it goes without saying, track all your expenses. Anyone that's not, keeping track of their mileage, any tools they're using, any shipping supplies, all that stuff. Yes, just track it. I use GoDaddy bookkeeping like so many in the community do. I think it's great. I think for me, the only thing that's been a little confusing is cost of goods sold.
Yep.
And it's only because, like, I sell a ton of hardware by day in my other business, but we purchase it and resell it, the next day.
Right.
There's not this. It's not going to potentially sit on the shelf for 2 years. So right. I think that's one that's a little sticky. Now, personally, I just track all my cost of goods when I buy it.
Right.
And I just don't worry about, most of my stuff sells,
right.
Especially as I get more experience. It'll sell certainly within the year, right. A vast majority. So I tend not to worry about it too much. But just in general, just I would advise anyone, use GoDaddy bookkeeping. The categories are already, built for you.
Right.
And just do it. I also have for eBay, I have a PayPal credit card, so it, all my supplies, I just take it right out of, I just use that card, it puts it right into GoDaddy, and it's good to go.
And then the last question I have, and this is just more for my own personal interests. So when you own a business like you do, and you want to get out, how do you sell it? Or is that what happens? Do you sell it to somebody else, or do you,
Well, okay, so now starts hour two of the podcast.
Yeah, this is like,
I will tell you, I've never sold a business, Jay.
Right.
That's a very smart question and an important question. And one of the, again, back to this idea of building an empire, what can happen over time is, like on paper, I probably, some people say, wow, that guy's doing pretty well.
Yep.
But what happens is as your business grows, you retain earnings. You put earnings back into the business. You don't put everything into your wallet and then go down to Neiman Marcus and, buy yourself a whatever. Yeah. Down the road someday, selling a business could be a great payday and everything. We've actually had some interest in one of my businesses, and I know, I know there are brokers. You can literally go to. There are people that just sell businesses.
Wow.
It's just like getting a real estate agent. You can do that. But the other thing that I think I've seen just amongst my other business owner friends and contacts, it does always seem that the owner of the business typically values the business way higher than the potential buyer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, and I think that's understandable. You've put your blood, sweat, and tears and so forth into it. But, this can be kind of a set of handcuffs.
Yep.
It's funny. I haven't put my head on the pillow and wondered, am I going to have a job tomorrow? That hasn't even crossed my mind, for well over a decade. But if I ever laid my head on the pillow and said, oh man, what's something different I could do? Well, that's actually kind of a tough riddle because I have all these responsibilities with this thing that I have ownership in, and so it's a riddle. So, and again, this is why every time you and Ryan sort of talk about let's keep it simple, I just cheer behind the scenes because I think that's especially you are people that you're taking the benefits from the way you've structured your business and your life to actually live the way you want to.
Yeah.
You're traveling, you're doing all this other stuff, and that's the whole point, isn't it? That makes so.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Tony, but we aren't that old, but I'm starting to get old enough to where I'm starting to feel it a little bit, and I started thinking I'm enjoying things, but when we travel, I'm like, I'm getting a little older. Like I get a little tired, a little easier. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 20 years. So I'm like,
Yeah, well,
I want to do these things now, taking 15-hour flights and, all this stuff,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, try having a 4-year-old.
Oh, my God, right?
He told me just the other day, Dad, we need to start working out. And I just thought, oh my goodness, he has the tact at 4 years old to find a nice way to say, Dad, you need to start working out. Anyway,
okay.
Jay, I wanted to say for sure, I mean, thanks so much for what you guys do. It's just what a service you guys are performing, and how you've given us a peek into your life, and I think it's so many of us light bulbs are coming on. It's like, wow, there's a different way to go about life here. This is really something.
I mean, that's very good to hear. Sometimes we get it's confused why people are interested in hearing us talk blab about our daily lives. But I hear you. It's I know when we started, it was difficult to find people who were just willing to kind of talk about the good and the bad, and we always try and include both those things because it feels more real, because that's what life is about.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Tony, thank you so much for talking to me on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, or at least where I am. So,
Jay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, I'll see you, Tony.
Okay, take care.
Bye.